You've heard the name, right? Nicolas Flamel. It conjures up images of alchemy, immortality, and ancient secrets. But the story you think you know? Well, that might just be the beginning. Today, we're separating the man from the myth. For centuries, the tale has been epic. A humble Parisian scribe discovers the ultimate secrets of the universe. He creates the Philosopher Stone, a magical substance that can turn any metal into pure gold. And with it, he brews the elixir of life, granting himself and his wife, Pernell, eternal life. It is, without a doubt, one of the greatest stories ever told. So what gives a legend like this so much staying power? Well, part of it is that it seems to come from the man himself. This quote, supposedly from Flamel, makes his quest sound not like some greedy grab for gold, but like a holy mission. It gives the whole story this air of, undeniable truth. Okay, so let's dive headfirst into that legend. How did this regular bookseller supposedly crack the secrets of the cosmos? The story that had all of Europe buzzing for hundreds of years? Well, it starts with a book. As the legend goes, it all kicked off in 1357. Flamel gets his hands on this ancient, mysterious manuscript. For more than 20 years, he and Pernell worked on it, but they got absolutely nowhere. Then, a fateful trip to Spain changes everything. He meets a wise man who gives him the final piece of the puzzle. And then, on January 17th, 1382, he did it. His first successful transmutation, turning mercury into solid gold. What a story. It's got everything. Mystery, dedication, magic. Honestly, it sounds almost too perfect, doesn't it? And that leads us to the single most important question we can ask about Nicolas Flamel. Is any of it actually true? Well, this is where things get interesting, because when you start digging into the actual historical records, the legend completely unravels. The master alchemist? Nope, he was a public scribe. The immortal man who lives forever? Yeah, he died in 1418. And instead of deciphering ancient books, he was a well-known landlord and a huge philanthropist. So this is the real mystery. How did this guy become that myth? To really understand the legend, you first have to meet the real man. So let's peel back all those centuries of myth and find the historical Nicolas Flamel, the one who actually walked the streets of 14th century Paris. The records paint a pretty clear and very different picture. The real Flamel was a professional scribe and a bookseller. His fortune didn't come from turning lead into gold. It came from his day job, some smart property investments, and, oh yeah, marrying Pernell, who was already a pretty wealthy widow. And the thing they were most famous for? Not magic, but their deep faith and their incredible generosity. And if you want to see evidence of his true character, look at this. This building right here is thought to be the oldest stone house in Paris. But Flamel didn't build it for himself. He built it as a hostel for the poor back in 1407. The only thing he asked for in return was that they say a prayer for the dead each day. This wasn't some alchemist's secret lair. It was an act of profound charity. And as for that whole immortality thing, well, this is his actual tombstone. And you're not going to believe this, but after the church where he was buried was torn down, his tombstone was found being used as a cutting board in a grocery store. It's a pretty bizarre, but also a very definitive proof of his very real death. Okay, so if Flamel was just a normal, mortal scribe who died in 1418, where in the world did the story of an immortal alchemist come from? Well, the answer isn't in his lifetime. It's found almost 200 years after he died. This timeline really says it all. Flamel dies in 1418, and then for almost 2 whole centuries, nothing. Crickets. Not one single alchemical text, not one story mentions his name. Then, bam, in 1612, a book suddenly appears in Paris called The Book of Hieroglyphic Figures, and it claims to be the long-lost journal of Nicolas Flamel himself. Now, this book is a classic example of something called pseudepigrapha. It's a fancy word, but it just means a work that was written by one person but falsely attributed to someone more famous to give it more weight. Modern scholars have looked at the language, and the French used in the book is clearly from the 1600s, not the 1300s. So the real Flamel, he definitely didn't write it. So you have to ask, why pick Flamel? Of all the historical figures out there, why him? Well, it turns out the real author, whoever they were, chose brilliantly. Flamel's job as a scribe made it totally believable that he'd just stumble upon some ancient secret book.
His reputation for being so religious and charitable made the whole controversial pursuit of alchemy seem blessed by God, not just greedy. And maybe most importantly, he was a real person, but not so famous that a bunch of facts would get in the way of a good story. He was the perfect blank slate.
That book was an absolute sensation. It kicked off a myth that would become far more immortal than the man ever was. So how did this story, completely made up in the 17th century, take on such a powerful life of its own?
And I think that gets right to the heart of it. The idea of a humble, good-hearted man who unlocks the secrets of the universe through hard work and faith. It was just too compelling, too perfect a story to let the actual facts ruin it.
Once the story was out there, it just exploded. People started reporting that they'd seen the immortal Flamels traveling in India. In the 1700s, people swore they saw Nicolas and Purnell enjoying a night out at the Paris Opera. By the 1800s, literary legends like Victor Hugo were writing him into their novels. And of course, in our time, he became a household name for millions as the creator of the Philosopher's Stone in the Harry Potter books.
You know, when you step back and look at it, the real magic here isn't about turning lead into gold. The real magic is how history and memory and just one heck of a good story can turn a charitable scribe from Paris into an immortal, all-powerful wizard. That is the real transformation. Flamel's story is an incredible reminder of how blurry that line between fact and fiction can get. It shows us that some legends are just so powerful, they become their own kind of truth. And it leaves us with this one final nagging question. How many other things we accept as history are really just stories that were too good not to be told?